How long do you spend writing your progress notes every day? If it's over 30 minutes, you should check out Describe. Describe is a HIPAA compliant AI note taking software that I and many of my students use daily. It saves me 1 to 2 hours a day on my documentation around consulting, and I know it's going to save you more in counseling. Also, it customizes exactly to my own writing style. I recommend that every therapist give it a trial. It's free. Go to describemed.com to get started for free. Again, that's describemed.com to get started for free. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1221. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we are helping you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. We want you to thrive. We want you to do things great clinically and in your business and in your marketing and how you position yourself. But we don't want you to lose yourself in the midst of all of this. There's so many ways in the world that you could make money and survive, and there's no reason to have a practice that you don't absolutely love. Now, there's going to be things that you have to do that maybe you don't love doing, but we also want to look at how do we put our best energy into the things that matter most. And that's why I'm so excited today to be talking with Susan Piver. Susan is the New York Times bestselling author of many books, including The Hard Questions, the award-winning How Not to Be Afraid of Your Own Life, The Wisdom of a Broken Heart, Start Here Now, an open-hearted guide to the path and practice of meditation, and The Four Noble Truths of Love, Buddhist Wisdom for Modern Relationships. Her latest is the Buddhist Enneagram, 9 Paths to Warriorship. Susan has an international reputation as a skillful meditation teacher, a student of Buddhism since 1993. Susan graduated from a Buddhist seminary in 2004. In 2012, she founded the Open Heart Project, the world's largest online-only Dharma center. Susan, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you here today. Before we get into meditation, which is kind of the main focus, you've written a lot of books.
I know.
I've written one traditionally published book. I've written 5 books that were more like self-published, just like they weren't. I don't really classify them as like books. How do you find creativity and stamina and time for writing? I'd love to know a little bit about your writing practice before we dig into meditation.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could say I have a practice and I get up every day at 6 and I write for 3 hours and I don't stop till I have 2,000 words. But I've never had any such a routine, sadly, because it would be so much better if I could predict myself. But I am a passionate practitioner, I guess you could say, of the Buddha Dharma. And I learn things from really great teachers that I just really want to share. And it may sound a little prosaic, but I get very encouraged by the teachings that I've received. And, I have written a lot of books, but it's been over like 15 or 18 years or something. So it's not like I'm writing, churning out the books. So I like, this is my life. This is my life's work, to talk about Buddhism in a way that is applicable to our everyday life. So that gives me a lot of inspiration.
What do you think people get wrong about Buddhism?
Yeah, that's a great question. That if you were really good at being a Buddhist or a good meditator, you would be really calm all the time, and pain would not hurt you. And that is not included in Buddhist practice, as far as I can tell. But there are a lot of, ideas that if you could do it, whatever the it is, you would not have an ego and you would not be attached. And all these things that are, when you look under the hood, are just kind of silly and are actually anti-humanist. They sort of want to talk you out of being a real person who has all the highs and all the lows. And I think that's what most people get wrong, is that somehow I'm going to be, quote, all Zen. And if not, then my practice is not successful.
Mm. Use that word successful. Let's start to dig into meditation and like what is quote successful practice. And I know that meditation is used in lots of now medical and counseling worlds, and we're kind of not talking as much about that. But let's talk about just meditation in general, and then we can kind of dig into your particular way of talking about it. Um, what do we get wrong with meditation, and what is quote successful meditation?
um, in the classic sense, there's only one answer to that question: what is successful meditation? And that answer is liberation from suffering. And I have not achieved that, so I can't describe it or say much about it. But that's the aim: is to become liberated from suffering, from dualistic views, whatever one might call it, so that you can be of benefit to yourself and others. Um, I would say a successful meditation practice, in more down to earth terms, would be one that continually surprises you with its consequences. So when we enter the practice with our agendas, which are very good to have, I want to be more patient, I want to get a better night's sleep, I want to have less stress. No one can argue with those things. Those are really important things and truly worth pursuing. But not while you're practicing. When you are doing the practice, to let go of all the agendas opens a larger window to seeing other benefits of meditation besides what you come in wanting. So, for example, and I won't make this overly long, but meditation is often called mindfulness, and that is entirely correct. And however, it's only half correct. It's only 50% of what one is practicing. And the mindfulness piece is you choose an object for your meditation. In most cases, it's the breath. It's very conveniently located. And you place your attention on that object. And when it strays, you just gently come back, and it strays again, and you gently come back. And that cultivates what is called mindfulness, or focus, or one-pointedness, precision. And it's extremely valuable in our world of 1,000 crazy inputs. For if you are kind of person who can place your attention where you would like it to go, or withdraw it when you wish, then you have quite a gift. It is only half of what happens, because the second piece is called awareness, which is something starts to let go or expand in the way your mind and heart work. So meditators the world over will tell you, well, since I've been meditating, I've been crying more, I've been laughing more, my sense perceptions are more vibrant, I see connections that I'd never saw before. So that's called awareness. It expands. Without mindfulness, it doesn't. And mindfulness you can work at. Like, I'm going to be better at that. I'm really going to try harder. That's great. Awareness you can't work at. It just happens when you make space, and it arises organically. So I'd say, to go back to your original question, the sign of a good practice is increased mindfulness and increased awareness, but not necessarily increased peacefulness or calm. So that's a misconception, I would say. But more genuine, more authentic, more real, more present, more vibrant, those are real. Those things happen.
Well, I know that before we started rolling, we talked about how a lot of the content aimed at therapists is around mindfulness and meditation from more of like a medical model, or helping clients in that way. And we were talking about how maybe we weren't going to go there today as much. Tell me your thoughts on why you'd like to go in a different direction.
Oh yeah. Well, first, I've never gone in that direction. I've been that's never been my focus. So, but there are many brilliant people out there for whom that is their focus. And for more info on that view, one should go to them. But I've been a practitioner in Tibetan Buddhist lineages, which are the mystical traditions of Buddhism, the esoteric tradition rather than the exoteric. So truth about meditation, I'm afraid to say, I must say it though, is that at some point it's going to become very hard and very boring. And that's just how it is. And anyone who says otherwise, I don't know what they're doing, but they're probably not meditating. So when you come into it for prescriptive reasons, which is entirely a wonderful way to start, eventually the practice will lose its power because it is constantly sort of urging your mind to open to what is beyond conventional thought by the simple mechanism of you're sitting there and you're breathing and you get carried away by thought and you let go and you come back. Happens again, you let go. In the wake of the letting go, something new is possible. And I'm sure every therapist could say this far better than I, that to create change in the way your mind works and the way you operate in the world, it's very helpful to know how to let go of the stories we tell ourselves. And without that capacity, we tend to simply make more interesting stories or more complicated stories. But when we can let go of the stories, let's say in the case of the people we're talking to right now, around their pain, to instead feel the pain, the story may be entirely brilliant and important, and I'm sure it is. But when you can let go of the story to feel, something is set in motion, something is metabolized in your inner experience that doesn't seem to get metabolized through more, I guess, academic pursuits of healing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, for you, when have those pursuits, like, were there teachings that really stood out to you, or aha moments that felt like you unlocked something?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's been more than 30 years, so there have been many such moments. I guess one of the primary ones, and this was in my early days as a practitioner, it involves a short anecdote, so I hope that's okay. Um, I had read a book that said one of the primary qualifications for being a spiritual warrior, whatever one might, however one might define that, is to have a broken heart. And that really stuck with me. That was, I'm like, well, I don't want that. And I don't know how, I guess that wasn't true, but what does that mean? So one day, again, this was long ago, I was having a terrible heartbreak from a relationship that ended. And everybody's been through this to one degree or another. And everyone's been through heartbreak, but some heartbreaks, your whole world stops. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you don't know who you are anymore. Everything falls apart. And it was one of those kinds of heartbreak. And I thought about it all day and dreamt about it all night. And I'm like, I don't know when I'm ever going to stop crying. So one day, this is the anecdote part, I was taking out the trash on trash day. I was wheeling these trash barrels down to the curb in front of my house. And I was thinking, what is going on? How will I ever get over this? He's a jerk. No, I'm an idiot. No, blah, 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 all the things that one thinks under such circumstances. He's probably with someone else and they're laughing at me right now, and so on, so forth and so on. And I sat down between the trash bins thinking, maybe when the trash people come, they'll throw me away, because I don't know how to begin to fix this or solve this. I don't know how to feel different. And immediately following that thought was another thought that came from who knows where that said, but nothing is happening right now. And I kind of looked around and it was true. Nothing was happening. I was sitting on the curb. Well, it was a sunny day. No one was laughing at me. No one was taunting me for being a jerk. Nothing was happening. And I've investigated this, but nothing is happening right now countless times. And almost always it's true. Nothing is actually happening right now. What is hurting me is the way I think about things. So, not that my pain wasn't real, extremely real. But I learned in that moment one of the primary Buddhist teachings, which says if you can work with your thoughts, you can heal your suffering. And I saw right away that that was true. I could do it, and I could do it for like 9 seconds. And then it all came rushing back, but I never forgot that moment.
Supervision hours are a big step on your path to licensure, but they shouldn't feel like an obstacle. My friend and fellow therapist Rachel felt the same way. When she was working toward her own license, she knew there had to be an easier way. That's why she created Motivo, giving therapists like you a flexible, supportive way to complete your supervision hours virtually. With over 1,200 vetted supervisors nationwide, Motivo connects you with the right support for your journey, one that aligns with your goals and clinical niche. So whether you're a therapist collecting hours toward licensure, an organization that hires associate therapists, or a clinical supervisor, head on over to Motivo Health to learn more. Your path to licensure should feel exciting, not exhausting. Get started today at motivohealth.com/Joe. That's MOTIVO health.com/Joe to get started today. Yeah, it's such a great moment of that the actual reality of the situation was that there wasn't pain being inflicted other than what was going on in your brain. That there wasn't danger, there wasn't these things. When you you just said like work on your thoughts and then that'll help the pain. I don't think that's exactly how you said it. Tell me more about working on the thoughts.
Well, if you can work with your mind, you can work with your pain. So in Buddhism is very big on suffering, talks about suffering in lots of ways. Lots of words for suffering, lots of definitions of different kinds of suffering, and so on. And the first form of suffering is just ordinary. We all are going to have it. There's loss, there's disappointment, there's upsetting and worse things are going to happen to all of us. That is not optional. This is part of being human. However, there are two other kinds of pain that are optional. And the second kind is called the suffering of suffering, which is germane to our conversation right now, which refers to what we add to the suffering. So my suffering of having a broken heart was real, but I added a lot to it by this means that about me, or this means that about our relationship, and this is how my future is going to go, and this is what came from my past to make that happen. Now, maybe some of those things turned out to be true, but they amplified my suffering. If I just turned toward the feeling of my suffering, which was enormous, I'm not saying that it would be good, that I would have fixed it, but it would have metabolized more quickly. And the third suffering that's often mentioned is called all-pervasive suffering, which is a general sense that something's not right here. Things are fine, but I don't know, maybe a big boulder's about to fall on the roof, or so-and-so says they love me, but maybe they're lying. And, it's just this general sense of being ill at ease, which is very ordinary and understandable. But those last two are optional, suffering of suffering and all-pervasive suffering. And the sort of counterbalance for both of them, again, acknowledging that the first kind of suffering is not optional, you're going to have it, is to continually return your mind to the present moment, which is not maybe happy, maybe unhappy, but it's another way of saying, but nothing is happening right now. So when you turn your attention to right now and allow yourself to become absorbed in it, right now may be great, may be awful, but you're only with suffering number one, if at all. And the way meditation helps with this is you practice it by placing attention on the breath, as mentioned, and when your attention strays, you bring it back. And the breath is not the important part here. The breath, it is important, but the breath is a stand-in for the present moment, because it doesn't matter if you're great at following your breath. Nobody's really great at it, I don't think. But what matters is, are you great at tracking your experience when you get up off of your meditation cushion or chair and go into your world? Are you great at paying attention to that? That's the sign of a really good practice, when you notice that is improving. And it happens to also be an antidote to suffering.
For therapists listening, working with their clients, how do you take this approach to helping other people?
Well, I'm not a therapist, so I don't know, and I
Mhm.
can't give advice about that. But it depends on the therapist, and it depends on their view, and most of all, it depends on their practice, I would say. Because if they don't have one, but they want to teach it to others, then it's going to be very confusing for all involved. So I would say it would be very helpful if you're interested in meditation, and certainly not for everyone, to be trained to teach it. Because even though it's very simple, I could give the instruction in literally 90 seconds, the consequences are not simple, and they're quite profound. And in addition, can be a sense that, especially in recent years, that meditation is good for everyone all the time. And that is not in any way true. Deep trauma sensitivity is required when it comes to meditation because it amplifies the inner state, and it can help with non trauma related suffering, even acute trauma, let's say. But chronic trauma or PTSD or versions of that, it may be very harmful for the person to meditate. So training is the best advice that I can give for the therapist. And then how they uh, share the practice with their clients, that will have to be up to them, obviously.
Mhm. When you think about the spiritual side of meditation, what what else are essential elements that we should know?
Well, I guess I could say I don't know, because it's so personal and so intimate that I can only barely talk about what the benefits have been for me. And I've had the good fortune to teach at this point probably tens of thousands of people how to meditate. And I would never tell anyone this is what's going to happen. But I see, nonetheless, what seems to happen for most people is more vulnerability. And so that's why, in addition, trauma sensitivity is important. But the vulnerability is the gateway to the things that I think we are actually really interested in. I say that without knowing anybody, but I feel like I can safely say this about everybody nonetheless, is if we're what we're interested in is love and creativity and true insight and deep wisdom. Those things all have one thing in common. They are things that we allow. They're not things we can go out and get, no matter how smart you are. They're things that arise. It's no mystery, I don't think, that some of the world's greatest inventions and ideas have come to people who are sleeping or, taking a shower or something. There's unbidden insight is everything. That is a spiritual benefit. And if one thinks of meditation as nothing else, you could think of it as the practice of making space for things to arise, like love and wisdom and so on.
Now, for yourself and for your students, like what are some common areas that in your community as you're teaching that people get hung up, or areas that they need some help kind of breaking through?
Well, the biggest misconception about meditation practice is that in order to do it, you have to stop thinking. And that is crazy. No way. First of all, there's no off switch. And even if you could stop thinking, so what? It wouldn't be, so what? So people think, well, I need to sit down and clear my mind of thought. And if I'm not clearing my mind of thought, then I am not meditating or I'm failing in some way. And that, I wish I could erase that. There's only one thing you have to stop thinking, and it's that in order to meditate, you have to stop thinking. In the Buddhist view, as I was trained, mind is a sense perception, like ears and eyes. It's the sixth sense perception. And as with all the sense perceptions, there is no off switch. So people get very caught up in trying to change the way their mind works, and that's not important. That's not necessary. So that's a real stumbling block. And the other thing I think people get caught up in, when I say people, I mean me too. I'm not immune to any of this, is it's going to help me to be less attached. And that is actually not what happens. If by attachment you mean not impacted by pain, not affected by your life, that the opposite actually happens. You're more affected. So attachment, non-attachment here doesn't mean not feeling highs and lows. It means being willing to feel what's there when it's there and then let go when it's gone. That's non-attachment. It's riding the waves of your experience without trying to freeze frame or prevent or attract even. So that's something that is difficult to accept. I think that, but
Yeah, I think
but
there's this mindset sometimes of like, if you're enlightened or if you're practicing that, you'll just float through life without like being affected by what's happening, that you won't be disappointed in people that you love letting you down, or people that you trust, when they change their mind or whatever, like that you'll have zero emotions around that. You'll just be like fine with it all. It sounds like that's definitely not what you're saying. That you're saying, if anything, you feel that more and you don't try to escape it.
exactly. That's exactly right. You feel it more, and you might try to escape it. That's fine. You can't. But you could watch yourself trying to escape it. And you could see yourself seeing yourself trying to escape it. I don't mean to sound all kooky here, but we're all going to try to stop our suffering. And if you try to stop trying to stop your suffering, you're increasing the suffering. So the best you can do is I am trying to stop the suffering. What does it feel like to do that? Not from a clinical distant perspective, but just from acknowledging this is what's happening. I'm trying to stop my suffering. Let me embrace myself as I see myself trying to do that. And again, if I try to stop trying to stop the suffering, I end up in Palookaville. I just amplified the situation. It's the same with attachment. In general, when people talk about non-attachment or you should be less attached and so on, they're attached to non-attachment. So, now what? So there's only now. I wish I realized that fully, but everywhere I try to poke my head to go, well, I would like a different now, I end up hitting a wall. So, yay.
Well, Susan, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Your inner wisdom is impeccable.
I love it. I feel like that could be a whole nother podcast episode. Susan, if people want to get your books, if they want to follow your community, where should we send them?
Thank you for asking. Openheartproject.com is my website. And if you just Google Susan Piver, it'll put you there.
So awesome. Susan, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Well, we've had quite a number of amazing episodes lately. Make sure you go back and check out any of those that are of interest to you. Also, we couldn't do this show without our sponsors, Motivo, giving therapists like you a flexible, supportive way to complete your supervision hours virtually. With over 1,200 vetted supervisors nationwide, Motivo connects you with the right support for your journey, one that aligns with your goals and clinical niche. So whether you're a therapist collecting hours towards licensure, an organization that hires associate therapists, or a clinical supervisor, head on over to Motivo Health to learn more. Your path to license should feel exciting, not exhausting. Get started today at motivohealth.com/Joe. That's MOTIVO health.com/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.